welcome back to Sharing with Sheri. Today, I have a much needed conversation that we're talking about anxiety and the Black man. And sitting with me, I have Jeff Menzies, who is an associate professor at the Morgan State University Institute. Hi.
Hey, Sheri, how you doing?
So happy for you being here. Okay, can you tell us your credentials and why is this subject so important to talk about for you?
Sure. So I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, also a professor of psychology at Morgan State University. I've been a clinician for it's a long time now, about 15 years now. Started off working on the front lines with clinical populations, mostly those in foster care. And then I kind of graduated myself to training clinicians. And so I focus more on that aspect of it now.
So you focus more on the clinician side, but you started with foster children?
Well, I was working as a clinician with children in the foster care system, but now I'm more training clinicians, preparing future clinicians.
Wow. Yeah. I was researching on my own just some numbers and things about the disparity on mental health and African Americans. And something that I found that was astounding to me, 13% of the U.S. population identifies as Black or African American. Of that, over 16% reported having a mental illness. So that's about 7 million people total. So when we think about that, how does demographics in our environment shape our reality?
Well, so when you look at those numbers, 16% reporting having mental illness, and that's self-report. And so those are people that are aware that they're actually going through something, and then also willing to admit that they are. And then when you think about 7 million people having some type of mental health issue or some type of mental illness, you're also talking about a wide range of experiences. So you can have somebody who may wake up feeling sad consistently for a week or two. And you can also have somebody who may be entertaining thoughts of actually committing suicide for a week or two. And so there's a wide range of severity of symptom as well as the types of mental illnesses that people can actually be experiencing.
So really those numbers are pretty general
as
to what really is
actually
happening.
going on. Exactly. Because because it could be scary when you think, oh my God, 7 million people, you're looking all around you like, and you think everybody, is Ted Bundy or Jeffrey Dahmer or Hannibal Lecter, you know what I mean? When reality, it's everyday people experiencing everyday life.
Everyday life.
And so because our mental health is something that is fluid, we have different variations of mental health as well as we have variations of mental illness. And each of us almost at some point in our life dips into the range of having some form of mental illness or not. And it's a normal thing, just same way you might catch a cold twice a year. It's the same type of thing. And then sometimes you could come down with COVID though, so it can get more severe and extreme. Same type of thing.
Another thing I saw from the census data, 55% of all Black and African American people lived in the South, 18% lives in the Midwest, 17% Northeast, 10% in the West. So when we think about where we live, does that shape our realities as well and cultivate into our anxieties? How does environmental play?
Absolutely. So as you noted, the majority of us are still in the South. And I say still in the South because when you think about how, American Africans or African Americans got to the country, many of us were placed in the South on plantations. And so when you look at regions of existence, then you have to also take into account the historical legacy of those areas. Which the culture holds fast to cultural legacy or historical legacies. And so when you look at the cultures that's born out of, plantation mentality, both from those who are plantation owners and those who are plantation prisoners, you have to understand that there's a psychological lineage as well.
Absolutely.
And then not only that, but when you look at a place like Mississippi, for example, I believe it's the poorest state in the union still. And so you're talking about resources and how resources impact mental health. And how the stress of poverty, oftentimes will bring about depression as well as anxiety. Anxiety being worry or concern about survivability most of the time, the ability to make ends meet, the ability to show up and perform as expected, And so, so region definitely does. And not to mention, not to belabor the point too much, but not to mention that, you go out west and it's sunny California. You know what I mean?
And it's just you're automatically happy.
The weather's perfect, you know what I mean? But it's a high cost of living. But even if you are quote unquote homeless in a place like California where the weather's pretty stable, you're not necessarily worried about being frozen out in the wintertime, so to speak. And so it's different based on region.
So let's talk about the disparities that I found from the National Alliance on Mental Health. And there's several categories within this. But the very first one is that Blacks or African Americans with any mental illness have lower rates using mental health services such as medications, outpatient provider services. However, they have a higher rate of using inpatient hospital services. So we're not seeing our specialists, we're not seeing a psychologist or seeing outpatient services, but we're going to the hospital. Yeah. Why is that? Why we, as Blacks, we won't go and see a doctor?
Right. Well, it's a such thing as cultural mistrust. Right. I did my master's thesis on cultural mistrust, and there's again talking about legacy.
Yeah.
There's a long legacy of Black people being treated with injustice by health services. Health service providers. Harriet Washington has a beautiful book called, what's beautiful is in it's thorough and it's insightful, but it's called Medical Apartheid. And the topic is actually very, very difficult to deal with, but it talks about medical experimentation from some of our top institutions, such as Johns Hopkins, to where they have conducted experiments on people of color, mostly Black people, mostly from the South, vulnerable populations. And, we understand that to be the case. And so we don't necessarily trust service providers, especially when they don't look like us. And we trust a little more when they do. You can see the data on that. But the thing about the disparity between the outpatient services and inpatient is that the inpatient is when you had to go. And a lot of times that's emergency room. You got dropped off at the emergency room or you jumped in an ambulance, right? And so that's why you see an increase on the inpatient side, because we were admitted for something and we probably waited to the last minute on that.
So let's go to something that, I hear a lot, And one thing is that African Americans often receive poor quality of care and lack access to competent care providers, who are the same cultural and ethnic background. So is it important that we see a Black psychologist, or can a white person who is licensed treat us as well? Why is there a difference?
So I have to, of course, say, yes, it's important for us to see Black psychologists if we're speaking in the psychological realm. We have the Association of Black Psychologists that is predicated upon instituting justice within the psychological service field, right? And, ABPSI, Associated Black Psychologists, was founded because of the racism that existed within the American Psychological Association by practice, by theory, as well as the organizational structure itself.
So racism within the practice.
Within the practice. And when you think about what psychology is, it's one of the most powerful disciplines on the planet, psychology and psychiatry. And it's because it's within these disciplines that we determine what is healthy and normal human behavior.
Right. And what I want to get and pinpoint is, why is it important for us to see someone or have a representation of someone like us?
And so because this is the discipline where those definitions come from, you have people who understand that if you say, for example, as a Black woman, I dreamed about my grandmama last night and I swear I smelled her perfume in the room. You're talking to another sister and the sister's like, girl, I had that same experience.
Right.
Somebody who is not of your same racial orientation, ethnic background, upbringing, cultural, they might see that as, whoa, is she hallucinating? Because then they might explore it further, like, so did you actually think that you heard your grandmother's voice? And you're like, yeah. And a sister like, me too. And this other one like, okay, auditory hallucinations.
Okay.
You see, and so it's important because we understand the experiences a little bit differently. And we're more likely to have the same worldview as each other. And worldview is basically, it defines the boundaries of your reality. It tells you, how do you know what you know? How are you capable of knowing things? Some worldviews will tell you that you have to count it, and you have to be able to count it and measure it. You have to be able to hear it, taste it, touch it, smell it, or see it in order for it to be real. Other worldviews say, oh no, you can also have a dream and it comes through.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this real quick. If Big Mama had a dream about fish, what is that telling her?
Somebody's pregnant.
Somebody's pregnant.
Yeah.
We didn't have to have that conversation beforehand.
Right.
I can ask somebody in Egypt who has this.
So there's a way that we talk, we speak.
There's a way that we know.
Our language,
and a way that we know.
No.
Because I could say that in a different language, maybe in the Nigerian language, and they would say the same thing.
Right. Just to center it around diagnosis, since we're talking about that. And this is from NAMI again. Compared to whites with the same symptoms, African Americans are more frequently diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, and less frequently diagnosed with mood disorders. African Americans are more likely to be misdiagnosed.
Yes.
Why is that?
The diagnostic criteria, for the most part, is developed based on white or European populations. And that being the case, there's a certain standard of defining as well as understanding the symptoms in their presentations. And even aside from that, though, is because a lot of times we talk about this as it relates to competence, the competence of the practitioner. But sometimes these folks are just vicious, and they have these internal biases that won't allow them to give the milder diagnosis, because in their mind, this person has to have the most extreme. Okay. So a person with, they might be sitting there presenting, they might be kind of anxious, but instead of anxiety, they'll say that they're paranoid and immediately go into the schizophrenic, criteria, you see. But that misdiagnosis of schizophrenia and the disproportionate diagnosis of schizophrenia for Black populations is something that's been going on for a very long time now.
Coming back, we're going to continue the conversation with anxiety and the Black man here on Sharing with Sheri. Don't go away.
In 4 days.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do.
Did you have a good day at school?
She gave them some broth without any bread.
There you go.
And kissed them all soundly.
Night-night.
Good night. And put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Coming back with Sharing with Sheri, continuing the conversation with Jeff. And so it's very interesting something you said just a moment ago, and I want to get to the financial reasons why African Americans don't get help. So the numbers show that about 27% of African Americans live below poverty level compared to 10% whites. Approximately 11% of African Americans are not covered by health insurance compared to 7% white. Approximately 30% of African American households are headed by women compared to 9% white households. So when you think about all of this, how can we begin to even reshape or introduce a change in these numbers?
Well, part of it, as you mentioned, is income. You have to have a disposable income, meaning your basic needs have to be met in order for you to think, okay, I could put this money towards seeing a counselor. And oftentimes seeing a counselor or psychologist is not a quick fix. And if you're going to put your money towards something, you want immediate results. So a lot of times if you're trying to decide between going to see a therapist, putting gas in your tank to get to work, going to see a therapist, or putting food on your table, the gas and the food is going to win. And so organizations like the Boris Lawrence Henson Foundation, Taraji P. Henson's organization, what we've done is we provided free therapeutic services for people. And it's by finding money and paying the practitioners to see the people, right? And it worked phenomenally. We had a high percentage of people seeing therapists for the first time because of this program, because it was made free. And so I think that it should be made free for people who need it.
Right. And let's talk about the poverty statistic. 27% of African Americans live below the poverty level. What do you think is contributing to this?
Out of work, either unemployed or underemployed. As you said, many of us live in the South, and so we're still in very rural areas, right? And so we have large concentrations of rural areas, then you're going to have a lot of people who are living at or below the poverty line. And it's still stressful, but a lot of times we've learned to adapt and make do in those areas.
And when you think about the Black man being a provider, right, being in this box of masculinity, right, and what that means, how much do you feel like that contributes to the anxiety of the Black man?
Big time, and especially with the access to social media and the interwebs these days, right? You see so many people flaunting real or fake wealth, prosperity, and success. And we start measuring ourselves against other people. And, our families begin to look at us and compare us to other people that may or may not be real. And so that definitely contributes to the anxiety of being able to make the ends meet. And then the failure to make the ends meet contributes to the depression aspect of it.
Absolutely. And when I thought about also how 30% of African American households are headed by women.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the man not being in the household and how that contributes to younger men growing up who are suffering, not getting help. Does that all correlate?
Absolutely does. If you look at the...
And not to say that women can't raise a man, but...
They can, but it's what type of man is being raised.
Right.
Right? Because a boy automatically grows into a man because a man is an adult male. But it's like, what type of man is that? You look at the movie Claudine, for example, James Earl Jones and Diane Carroll. And it shows you how the black man was systematically taken out of the household in order to receive financial services from the government.
Correct.
Right? And so when you displace the man and allow the women and children to be supported by an entity other than the man, then the man becomes disposable of sorts. And that wreaks havoc on identity, self-esteem, confidence, and it produces what we, I think, mislabel toxic masculinity.
Yes, toxic, right, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, really, to me, that's just an outgrowth of a toxic system that we're experiencing.
Yeah. Just a couple of things that I saw about our attitudes and beliefs, okay? Black and African American people hold beliefs related to stigma, psychological openness, and help seeking, which in turn affects their coping behaviors. Black and African Americans are not very open to acknowledging psychological problems, but they are somewhat open to seeking mental health services. And historically, which includes slavery, sharecropping, and race-based exclusions from health, educational, social, and economic resources, have played a role in this. So let's talk about that. Yeah.
Our attitudes and beliefs are an outgrowth of our experiences. And if we've had consistently negative experiences, for example, if I decided that I wanted to disclose on a job, that I was feeling kind of depressed, I'm at risk of losing my job.
Right.
If I disclose it to my family, I'm at risk of losing some level of respect. People might become concerned and feel like our stability is jeopardized if I'm the primary breadwinner. And so that's why the lack of psychological openness exists.
Yeah.
We learn that you play these cards close to your chest because if you tell the wrong people, it becomes weapons used against you later.
Right.
And it happens in a lot of relationships even.
Absolutely.
That's why a lot of men don't disclose their emotions in even relationships.
Absolutely. But I also feel like, especially when we talk about the beliefs and the stigma about, black men having the stigma, I don't want to be labeled as, depressed, or I don't want to be labeled as manic or what have you. How does that play a role in the black man getting help?
Right. So if it's stigmatized, it's to be avoided at all costs. And most things are stigmatized because it gives you a negative impression.
Right.
Somebody might see me negatively.
Yeah.
And again, if I'm seen going in and out of a mental health facility, people are going to assume and maybe even know that I'm dealing with mental health issues, even though they themselves may be also.
Yeah.
It's something about when that label is put on you. It's almost like the scarlet letter, if you will.
Right.
And so people try to avoid that. And most times, I believe it's for the sake of continued functionality. We don't want to be limited in our ability to continue to function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff, for being here. And I want you to stay right here. And we will come back. We are going into the community to talk to the church. What is the church doing right now to combat mental illness? Coming back on Sharing with Sheri.
It's time.
Pasta and chocolate dinner.
Oh, terrific.
Pasta dinner.
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
Welcome back to Sharing with Sheri, continuing the conversation on anxiety and black men. What is the church doing today in the community? We'll see right here with the conversation I had with Pastor Alphonse Allen Jr. at the Allen Temple AME Church. Take a look. Pastor Alphonse Allen Jr., thank you so much for being on my show and talking about this subject. So right off the bat, I want to ask you, what programs does the church offer for counseling service in the community?
The church is currently partnering with an outside source, called the Eve Group, and it's also the Adam Group, where you have peer counselors to do same-sex therapy with those parishioners or people from the community who would come to therapy here.
So people from the community, professionals, come to the church and they offer those services?
Well, we have a group who has approached us, and we are excited about that because one of the things that keep blacks away from therapy is the economic cost and not having the ride to be able to get to therapy.
So how can they gain access to that in the community? Just by coming to the church, or?
Well, what they can do is call the church, and the church can direct them to when the services will be started and what times would be available.
So what's the church's mission in the community as far as combating mental illness?
Well, the AME Church in general, we minister the gospel through ministering to the ecological, economic, emotional, mental, and financial needs of people.
Okay. What challenges do you see the church having combating the financial part, combating the visibility part, and making sure the community knows that these services are available? What challenges do you see for the church?
The issue is that one of the things is that when you have it at the church, people who don't go to church, that will kind of put their antennas up. That's the first thing. We just want to provide this for the community. This in no way means that if you are Muslim, if you are Hebrew Israelite, if you're Baha'i, if you have no religious persuasion at all, that you have to come in and believe what we believe, okay? We want to provide this for the community. That's the first thing. The other thing is that, a lot of black people just will not seek therapy because of the exorbitant costs. I mean, most insurances today, if you have insurances, they give you 1 or 2 sessions and that's it.
And that's it, yeah.
Yeah.
And how often do you see, as a pastor, black men coming to you for help, for counseling?
If I do 50 counseling sessions a year, if I had 3 or 4 males, that would be high.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. And how is the church trying to combat that challenge?
Well, once we get this Eve Group and Adam Group established and up and running, then that cost will go away. Again, people will come into the church. Yes, the pastor may let you in the door. Yes, my assistant security may let you in the door. But we won't be a part of your therapy. And no one will be able to hear. You will be in a very confidential situation. Those files will not be housed here with us.
I think that's very important for them to know.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a stigma with black men, blacks in general, that say, oh, well, I don't want to go to the church because all they're going to do is tell me pray about it. And I'm really hurting, I'm in pain. What would you say to that?
The church is guilty of spiritualizing mental health and emotional problems. When your tooth hurts, you don't just pray about it. You pray and you go to the dentist. If you have chest pains, you don't just pray about it. You pray about it, you go to the cardiologist. And so when you have emotional mental health issues, pray about it, and then go seek the help that you need. Now, one of the things that I think prayer and the church can be very supportive in this whole counseling venture. I think we can. I know we can. It works well when we're supportive. But people, we have to, even from the pulpit, normalize people going to therapy. We have to normalize that. And once we do that from the pulpit, and people start seeking therapy and making progress, the spiritual and the mental health, emotional piece, they go together.
Yeah.
They go together.
Absolutely. What would you say to that person that says the church is not doing enough in the mental health community?
I would say they're right. They're correct.
How so?
With this program that we're trying to put together, it's been months for us to try to partner with other churches, because what we wanted to do is to be able to have this church open a couple of days a week, another church open a couple of days a week, and another church open, and they all be in the same area. So if somebody walked here, if we had to put them in our van and take them to the next church, or we could say, hey, you're at the wrong church today, but it's right down the street, they would be able to do that.
Okay.
The reality is that the church is not doing enough. We certainly can do more. We certainly need to do more. And really the time is over. You know, traditionally we love spirited worship. But what does spirited worship do for you that after you have shouted and done a few cartwheels and sweated out your clothes, you go back home to the same problems that you can't solve and the same depression and anxiety that you can't control? So I think that release, that emotional release plays a part in it, but there has to be something more solid than that really addresses the issue. And the fact of the matter is that we have to see in the black church, we have to see the people who are in our church, and we have to see the people in the community as our greatest asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Pastor Alphonse Allen Jr. I appreciate you being on my show. This is very valuable. How can people get involved with the church? How can they come to your services? Where are you located for those who don't know?
We're at 7080 Redden Road in Cincinnati, Ohio, right across from Woodward High School. What I told you, this is a great church. It's got a great choir, has a great AV department, and great ushers, great auxiliaries, great groups. And they got an okay pastor.
Yeah, I think they got a better than okay pastor. What parting words do you have for black men out there struggling right now and are not seeking the help they need?
Don't be afraid to go see a therapist.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Man, it's lonely. Like, going through life lonely.
There is the therapeutic aspect of music, just expressing how you feel. I'm going to talk to Howie about his feelings, make it into a song.
Thank you for joining the conversation on anxiety and black men. And what better way than to talk about anxiety with the black man than to talk from their perspective. And I have guests here, Aries Giovanni in my seat. I love you. Let me just say, you went to Ohio Media School, right?
Yes.
And what did you study there? What did you concentrate in?
I concentrated in film emphasis. That was my area of expertise, film production.
Yes, and I saw a video of you, because when I did my previous shows, we actually cut to a little small clip of one of your documentaries you're doing on yourself, right?
Yes.
And that's awesome. That's a great experience. How are you doing on that documentary?
Project Glorified is definitely a passion project. It's a documentary that I feel is much needed. As a black man, there are just certain things that we go through, that we experience, that we don't talk about, because culturally it's not okay. It's not okay to say, hey, I was touched. Hey, somebody hurt me. And you just grow up
not being able to get that off your chest. So Project Glorified is an opportunity, I feel, to say, hey, black man, it's okay. It happened to me too. And I feel if I can have, if I can just start that conversation, then I feel like it'll start another conversation. And then next thing you know, my brother's talking to his brother, and then his brother's talking to his brother. And then, out of those 7 million brothers, at least 6,999,000 of us are talking, and then we can find that last one. And fire, and that fire can either put that flame, the wind can either put the flame out or spread the fire. That's how I feel.
So what you mentioned a couple of things just a moment ago. You tell us what caused your anxiety. What was the causing point for you?
My problem started in 1997, around Christmas time. My mom was working overtime.
Take your time. Take your time.
I got dropped off with some family members who didn't want to do what they were asked to do. So they dropped me off to somebody else. And she decided that me at age 4, I was sexually attractive. So after they left, she just did some really bad things to me. And from age 4 up until age 12, those bad things would just not stop. And then after age 12, being a black man just continued. It just kind of continued for me. So my anxiety stems from never really knowing anything else. I've only known how to survive. I've never lived before. And I just turned 30 this year, and it's taken me 26 years of my life to just be able to bathe with that feeling somebody's gonna come in and attack me.
Yeah.
Or being able to feel like I can just do something without judgment. Like, there's just so much I feel that you go through, because there's not only is there being black and being impoverished and growing up where people around you are just not there the next day, there's also like that stigma. And me growing up being assaulted by a woman, there's this duality. Do I like women? Because women have hurt me. So do I like men? Because men haven't hurt me. But then you fast forward and then you're hurt by men. So now you're like, well, it doesn't matter. But that just stems a whole lot of identity issues, and next thing you know, you're having a crisis. And I know in the previous segment we were talking about misdiagnosis and just the lack of mental health. And there have been so many times I try to tell an administrator or try to tell somebody in charge, hey, this happened to me, and I've just been met with the most, just to be told, oh, that doesn't happen to little boys. Women don't do that to men.
Yeah.
You're making it up. Are you sure? Or my favorite, you should be lucky. It happened to me too. That's just what happens.
So the stigma behind that
is either
added to your feelings of anxiety.
Either my stigma was either A, you liked it, or B, you were and I don't mean to use that language, but that was the language that was presented toward me.
Absolutely.
Either A, as a black man, either you enjoyed a woman raping you, or B, because you didn't, you were for it. And then when you find out that it happened by men, you're anyway. So it's like, hey, so to grow up with that language and that dialogue when I'm in elementary school, and to have this just huge slice of real life, while everybody around me is worried about Power Rangers and things that children worry about. I've seen, but I didn't have that. I didn't get that experience.
How old were you when that first happened to you?
When the abuse started?
Yes.
I was 4. It was Christmas. It was Christmas, around Christmas time. I know because I lost my favorite toy around this time. I remember it's the last memory that I have before my disassociation kicked in. And I've had issues with disassociation since age 4 too. Just that trauma. And I remember when I heard the first voice, she was essentially laying on top of me doing her business. I heard a voice inside my head say, it'll be okay. And, at the time, I was going to church, being black kid, I grew up in the church a lot. At the time, oh, that's just, the voice of God. They tell me it's the Holy Spirit, but the same thing, it's like, well, I've been praying for him too. Where's the salvation?
Right, exactly.
God loves me as you claim he does, why do I experience this? And I think those are the type of things that you just grow up with. You have no sense of identity. You don't have it religiously, spiritually, sexually, and then you grow up poor. Like you have no, like you literally have nothing. You don't even, I don't have any, what was mine was taken from me and I didn't get to give it to anybody.
Yeah, and so there's a sense of lack of distrust.
For everything.
For everything, and lack of distrust for probably, you mentioned that you tried to tell someone, you tried to tell providers, you tried to, you know, and no one, how did they respond to you?
Like I was telling the stories, I got told I shouldn't be telling the stories, like I mentioned, oh, well, girls don't do that to boys, you know, oh, you're just trying to get attention. It was always something other than, you poor baby, let me hug you. And you know, my mom, I didn't grow up with, you know, like most black men, unfortunately, I didn't have that male dynamic. I didn't have a father. It was just me and my mom. And the support system just wasn't really there. So when my mom was away working overtime, it was, these just terrible things would happen. You know, there was no after school program. It was once, there was just nothing. It was essentially the streets. Until mom got home to provide, you know, the love that mom gave. But you know, for the majority of my day, between the trials and tribulations of just living and going through these things by myself and not having a support system and having to keep all this encapsulated inside of me, it just, I wonder who I would have been had I had
not happened to you.
Yes, and I'll never know. And it's not to say that who I am is not great, but people say, tell me about you, and I'm like, I don't want to, because when I tell you, you're not gonna like it. You're not gonna want to hear the harsh reality. You're not gonna want to hear that this is who I am, because it's a sad story.
Tell my viewers what that feels like for your trust to be taken. What is daily life like for you? Walking around with that feeling.
I can't love. It's impossible.
Take your time.
It's impossible to love. It's impossible to share and be yourself because you don't even know who you are. You have no idea. You put on so many masks, you forget which one you're wearing. You go through life trying, but it's just never the right fight. You're always getting ready, but it's never for the battle that's ahead. It's always for the wrong battle. And it's just impossible to just be. I'm always waiting for the next bad thing to happen. I'm always waiting for the next just chapter of trauma in my life. Like you stop living. And it turns you into this corpse. Turns you into this person that looks like you and people think are you, but it's not you. And the most heinous thing is nobody knows. Nobody knows that you need help. Nobody knows that you contemplated suicide this morning for 45 minutes. Nobody knows that you swallowed the pills and it just didn't work. Like nobody knows that you literally take items and you flog yourself to feel better, because that pain at least is something you can control. There's nobody, and then there's nobody to be mad at, because you know the worst thing about being a victim for so long, it's your word versus somebody else's. And how dare they, God forbid, they take up for what they did and apologize. God forbid they actually say, yeah, I raped you as a child. Yeah, I stuck things in you. Sorry about that. God forbid they have that conversation.
I know. It's hard, but you're here. And you're here to actually have a testimony. And as much as you have gone through, you're actually right now an example for others that are currently going through it, and that they're not alone. And so I thank you for sharing that story, because that, I'm sure, is not easy. Did you get help? Have you gotten help since then?
I started. I have a really good therapist. Shout out to the Christ Hospital. They have a really good outpatient program. I started, and it just took so long. You know, my life got taken to me at 4, and I'm 30. You know, because of my trauma, it's bled over into, you know, the most significant relationships in my life, and to the point where I don't even have them anymore.
Yeah.
You know, those relationships have come down to just a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You know, the emotion behind them is gone. That trauma bleeds over into other aspects of your life, and it just taints it. It just turns everything into this blackness that just absorbs everything. It just absorbs all the light. But I don't know how. You just gotta want it.
Yeah.
You just gotta one day wake up and say, you know what, I am the baddest SOB on the planet. And GD, I am Aries Giovanni, and you're not gonna beat me. One day you have to just decide that you're gonna get out your own way. Yeah. And I don't know how it happens. You just gotta want it. One day you gotta just gut check, and you gotta say enough is enough. I'm tired of being a victim. I want my life back. Yeah. And you just gotta fight for it. Oh my God, it's a hard fight. It is the hardest fight of my life. But it's the only one I've ever fought that was worth anything. It's finally the right one. Yeah. I finally got my own way.
And you're not fighting for just yourself.
No, not
You're fighting for your children.
Yes, and my kids' kids, and not even that, the world they are going to grow up in. You know, there's still a part of me that believes I can still be the change I want to see in the world.
See in the world,
yeah,
right.
And, you know, just maybe I can be the person that starts it all. Yeah. You know, maybe I can, you know, I feel like we've tried hate, we've tried war, we've tried rage, we've tried all these terrible, terrible things through our history as humans, but we've not tried peace and love. And I say, why not? Yeah. Let's try something else, because I know the opposite. I know suffer, I know struggling, I know pain, I know hate, I know rage, I know anxiety, I know frustration. But to just find a place where you can know peace and love and just decide that that's what I choose today. Yeah.
Well, coming back, we're going to talk about that joy, that little joy that you have holding inside of you when we come back from the break. Stay tuned with Sharing with Sheri. Don't go away.
How you holding up? Nothing wrong with getting help.
If I promise to look into it, will you drop it and help me build this fence?
Now you need my help.
If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach.
It's not fair. It wouldn't be fair at all. Because of this, I would lack confidence. I would lack a sense of identity, a sense of oneness. I would question everything that I do. Nobody in my family was talking about therapy. Nobody in my family was talking about Medicaid. There are so many stigmas in the Black community about therapy and recovery and healing.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Coming back, talking with Aries about his joy, which is his children.
Yeah.
You know, when you and I were talking recently about your kids, you just look at your face. You go from sadness and despair to just complete, utter inner joy. Your face just lights up.
Yeah, that's
and
so perfect.
To see you with your kids, it's a beautiful thing. So tell me about that joy that you find within your kids. Is that what helps you in your dark moments?
You know what? It's being a father is bittersweet. Growing up not knowing a dad, and to be a father of 4, you know, coming home and they hear my keys to the door and I just see these little faces just run up and give me hugs, you know, it's so bittersweet because that love is so unconditional, but there's a part of me that wish I knew what that was like from that perspective. But you know what, just growing up without my dad hurt me. And the fact that I've been given 4 lives to put into the world, and you know, just to know that there's gonna be somebody's daughter is gonna be safe with my son. You know what I mean? And it's just being a dad's the best thing in the world. It's the only thing that I've never gotten wrong so far. You know, they've never went without. They've never known hunger or you know, being too cold or being too hot or going without, or hell, even walking to the store. You know what I mean? Nothing like that. But you know, it was hard. My oldest son Prince is where I cut my teeth. You know, and the only trash thing about myself I feel guilt is I was a dad when I was undiagnosed for so long. So, you know, a lot of my episodes and the issues that come with having the disassociation disorder, trying to be a parent and not knowing those things is really difficult, you know? And, you know, if he ever watches this, I just hope that all my kids know I've always loved them unconditionally. Even on my worst days, I could never comprehend hurting a tiny little hair on their head. And not doing anything but loving and supporting them. And I just, you know, want them to have the opposite of what I do. You know, I want them to have a life where they can afford to fail. You know, if they want to ski for a month, go ski. I got you, you know. You want to be a librarian, let's go to librarian school. Whatever you want to do. I just want them to have a good life.
And what do you want to teach them that you didn't get? What do you want to change?
Love.
That's powerful.
My kids they're so kind. And they're so perfect and just joyous and gentle. And sometimes I question, how did a monster like I feel some days, somebody who's been through so much, how do I nurture these children? How do I give them guidance when I'm still learning as I go? And between me and you, I'm learning as I go. Most days I don't have a lick or an answer. And at the end of the day, most of the advice I give them is just rehash something from, you know, a story or something, you know, but you know, my kids think I'm a superhero. And
you are a superhero. You are a superhero to many people watching right now.
Well,
yes.
I appreciate it. But I just teach them, you know, the best superpower they can have is to, you know, peace and love. The best superpowers you can have. And I teach them to be kind. And I always remind them that it's free. It costs nothing to make somebody's day. It costs nothing to ask somebody how they're going. It costs nothing to give somebody a little love and just, you know, be a little sunshine. That's completely free. And, you know, I teach them to just try to do that. Guard your heart, guard your peace, and everything else will, you know, kind of make its way and work out.
So you have your kids that's the end of the rainbow for you.
Yeah, just to know that one day they're going to grow up and one day they're going to have lives of their own. And they're going to, you know, Dad, what do I do when this happens? And it's kind of dope that my kids are going to actually have a dad to go to. You know, where I did not, but, you know.
It's a beautiful thing. And I
is.
love seeing it. And I'm going to love seeing your documentary when you finish it.
Soon, yes. So I just need to get a little more pieces together. So, you know, documentaries are a lot to undertake by yourself.
They are, trust me, I know. We're coming back. We're going to talk to Monty Anthony right back after the break. So stay tuned.
Worried about your friend, but don't know how to reach out?
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could chat with them in VR, it's all good. If you think you should check in, yeah, you should.
Whatever gets you talking. Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Whatever gets you talking. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. High blood pressure silently affects millions of Americans. Staying on top of your blood pressure is as simple as these 4 easy steps. Self-monitoring is power. Visit manageyourbp.org to learn more.
Welcome back, and I am talking to Monty Anthony here, and you are so lovely. I love your smile.
Thank you.
You just
Thank you.
brighten up the whole room. I love it.
Thank
you. So Monty, thank you for being here and talking about your experiences. But first, let's just talk about you. You're not from here, right?
No.
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from a small town called Niagara Falls, New York. I grew up, born and raised, but my experiences was hard.
Yeah.
You know, dealing with a lot of things like sexually molested and anger and feeling abandoned, like trying to express myself and nobody would listen, you know, and it's like, not on top of that, I was in foster care too, taken away from my mom during birth. It was just hard, you know, separated from my siblings and feeling alone, you know, and the question I always used to ask myself is, who am I? Because, you know, I was told so many things like, you know, your mom is going to be this, your dad is going to be this, that, and the third. And it was just putting questions like, where am I? Who am I?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's confused.
Confusing, yeah.
Yeah. And, but as I got older, you know, it's like I started finding myself, you know, music, started finding my purpose in, you know, I didn't find music. Music basically found me.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it was like, expressing myself with writing songs, and because I felt like if nobody don't listen to me, you know, I might as well just put my pain and my hurt into my lyrics, because you know, maybe that's my way of getting my point across.
Right. And you said nobody, you tried to reach out, but no one really listened to you.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to my foster mom.
Yeah.
I tried, you know, me and my foster dad didn't see eye to eye because he was molesting me from the age of 5 all the way up to 12. You know, I tried telling my foster mom was, and on top of that, he was a pastor.
Wow.
So it was, he had his own church. So it was like, I tried telling my foster mom, you know, my foster mom is like, they've been together for about 30, 20 years. So it's, of course, she's going to take his side. And on top of that, I'm an outsider because, you know, she only took me in. They took me in for money. So it was like, it was just trying to talk to my teacher. And my teacher wouldn't listen to me because at the end of the day, he got ADHD, or he's this, he's hyper, and he's this, and it was just a lot.
Yeah.
And it put me to the point where, you know, I'm gonna remain silent. So I gotta put up with my hurt and my pain in silence.
Yeah.
You know, deep down inside, I'm broken.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, it's like I can't even talk to my friends because if I start crying in front of my friends, it's gonna make me feel like I'm soft. So it's like, what's the point of talking to them? And then they going through things too. And then they feel like if they talk to me and they don't, it's so much pride and ego where I'm from.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, I started being around people who was just like me.
Yeah.
And connected to people, outsiders. You know, I felt like, you know, being around strangers, people I don't know, from the same background, wanting the same exact thing, you know, fighting for the same exact thing I'm fighting for, that was my family.
And what did it feel like having a pastor, foster parent who was doing those heinous things to you, and knowing that you had nobody who would listen to you? Like, what did that feel like? I'm sure that felt like a lot of isolation.
It did. It put me into a box. you know, that felt like, you know, like I said, nobody loved me, nobody cared, you know. Nobody, you know what I mean? Nobody don't understand me, nobody gets me, you know. And I'm telling you, like, it was just, I felt like going to church was fake. You know, everybody the same, caused trust issues. You know, even growing up was the question, is I'm going to become gay or things like that. Like, it was just so much questioning myself and where I'm going to stand when I get older. But, you know, me going through experiences, you know, like I said, being around my friends who were just like me, losing one of my friends, closest friend, it was my wake-up call and like, you know what? It's something else in life. It's not, this is only temporarily. You ain't got to keep going through this. You ain't got to put yourself in this. You ain't got to be around these people or this, that, and the third. And like I said, I didn't find music. Music found me. And I felt like, I feel like music saved my life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, to this point, to this day, it was nobody but the grace of God who put music in my heart.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I could have been dead. I could have been somewhere, you know, suicide, easily taken from the people that I was hanging out with, even from my foster dad, you know, not even just physical abuse, emotional abuse, like destroyed, like my innocence is being ripped from me from a child, you know. And it's like, I ain't really asked to be here, because if I was asked to put in this situation, I guarantee you, if I would have known, I would have just told these people, let me get up out of here, get me up out of here. But at the end of the day, it taught me something.
Yeah.
And it taught me value. Because if nobody else is not going to value, you have to value yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
You was born alone, you're going to die alone. And at the end of the day, I got nobody but me.
Absolutely.
And then time went by, I have my kids. And it's like, I'm just living for my kids. Because if I was living for me, if it was up to my choice, I would have probably been took myself out of here. I'm going to be honest with you. But it's like, I look up, got 3 beautiful kids, 2 boys and a girl. And it's like, you know, I give the world to them because I want to pour into something that I never had.
Yeah.
I want them to feel love and acceptance, because I didn't have that. I didn't have the kind of guidance. I didn't have the things, you know, nobody poured into me. So of course I will pour into my kids if I have to. And then it's like, you know, it just taught me to become strong at the end of the day.
Yeah. And you talked about music being the only thing that allowed you during a really, you know, dark time in your life, the voice that you lost. So talk about that voice that you found in music.
You know, that was basically that was another spiritual wake-up calling. It's like God saying, you know, instead of music, because music is what the world goes. It's just like money. Music right now will make the world go around. Because when you turn on, first thing you hear is when you turn on your car, is the radio playing. It's either music playing or somebody talking. But it's like, if nobody gonna communicate with you when you talk, express yourself through your music, because I guarantee you, a lot of people can relate, and a lot of people can listen to you. A lot of people can understand where you're coming from. And I had to put every pen. It was to the point where I'm writing, my hand go numb. Like I got prints in my hand, and it's like, I write. It's to the point where it just, I don't have to write anymore. I can just say how I feel, and it's like, the words could just spell it
on the page.
Yeah, it got to that kind of spontaneous.
Yeah, you know, as a writer myself, that blank page does not judge.
It don't.
It's just a blank
sheet
of paper.
It's a blank page, and that's how I felt with me. Like I'm not gonna grow up in this world being judged. I'm not going to judge my foster dad. I'm not going to judge them. At the end of the day, me having that relationship with God and understanding, it's like I really had to forgive him. I didn't want to tell him I forgave him. But in order for me to make it in this world, I had to forgive everybody who hurt me. I had to literally swallow that pill. Because at the same time, I'm like, man, I want to go back and find out where he living and take him out, but I couldn't. Because
forgiveness is for you.
It is.
It's not for the other person.
It's not.
So that you can let go and you can heal.
But you know what though? I can honestly say being by myself taught me a lot about myself, because I tell people, you will never know who you really are unless you by yourself. You will never know your value. You will never know your love. You will never know your true self if you by yourself. And I spent a lot of time being alone, talking to myself, but I never knew talking to myself was only building a relationship talking to God. So it's like that's how I got my spiritual wake-up call in God. And even though, you know, my foster dad brought me to the church because he was a pastor, I didn't really too much care for it. It only, as I got older, it only pulled me closer by being by myself.
You know, and it's so interesting that your experiences with your foster dad being a pastor has not shaken or changed or stripped down your belief in God. And I think that's wonderful.
It didn't. You know what I did? You know what I really think though? I think what he did was, you know, God knew the people that I was gonna be around, but he also had to bring him there because he knew the kind of protection I needed to go. As I get older.
As you get older.
So I felt like, you know, the protection, he brought me to God because he knew deep down, because God knew he can't be the one to protect me.
Excellent.
So and another thing is, how I look at it is, you know, everything that I've been through, everything, it was really preparing me for destiny. Cause and not to tell me and not to show me not to give up. And on top of that, the people. You know, the people who hurt me, the people. You know, it's like only God made the people seasonal. It's seasonal because if you look at the seasons today, leaves fall. Summer they shine. Winter they get cold or freezing. But one thing about the season that stay the same is the tree. The tree never grows nowhere.
Absolutely, that's a
beautiful
analogy.
I felt like I was the tree through the season that made it through each season. While everybody else left me, I still stood my ground. I still believe in what I believe in to move forward, and I never gave up.
You are that tree. How old are you?
I'm 28.
And for you to be 28, you have gone through so much. And you have risen from the phoenix ashes, truly. So I appreciate you being here and expressing your story, truly. But don't go away, because coming up, we're coming right back to talk to our licensed professional counselor, Lauren White. So stay tuned.
Hey, honey. We thought we'd try something new.
Family art hour. What do you think?
You got jokes. You're funny.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Learn more at adoptuskids.org.
Dear moms and dads, we know it's not always been easy, and it's been a lot of hard work.
It's not worth
What you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
Everything I do it for you.
Mom, love you all.
No, it's true. Everything I do it for
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
The family's visit to the forest inspired a beautiful question. Mother, mother, am I a tree? You tell me to stand tall. You tell me to stay rooted. I think I am a tree. My child, of course you are. But what kind of tree will you be? The kind to hug or the kind to climb? Doesn't matter which you choose, so long as you choose to be a tree that's kind.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back to Sharing with Sheri, and I have Monty, Aries, and Lauren White, clinical therapists, here to talk about everything that we just discussed a moment ago. Thank you for being on my show, Lauren. So let's talk about your credentials and what you do in your practice.
Awesome. So I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor here in the state of Ohio. I've been working in counseling for about 5 years, and I work with a number of populations, so children, adolescents, adults, so pretty much done all the way from 10-year-olds to the grave. So working with substance use, I've done dual diagnosis, all that. So.
And one thing that I was hearing as a pattern when they were both talking a moment ago is the fact that they have reached out to people and asked for help, but got no feedback. So how do you see that often in your practice?
Yeah, I do see that, because sometimes people have a lot of shame and guilt in terms of sharing their stories. And then when they actually do speak to someone, that person may devalue their story or not believe them, and then that person closes up because the person that they trust did with that information hurt them. Yeah. And especially with men, I tell women, partners or partners of men, that if they open up themselves to tell you something deep and personal, don't use it as ammunition against them, because it's going to cause that man to regress. And he may not ever open up again. It's going to come out in different ways, whether it be anger or otherwise. So.
And when we talk about Black men not getting help and not reaching out to someone, when they do, they're shunned away. So I think that contributes to the shame and the stigma that they may feel. Do you agree? What do you think about that?
I feel like that a lot of times, and then that's this thing, especially when I work with other men, that they don't want to break down in front of other men. I think I heard Monty talking about that, how there's this whole conception of being soft or being weak. You gotta toughen it out. Yeah. Man up. Don't cry about it. Oftentimes you hear those things within it, and I'm gonna not lie to you and say, I've done it. Yeah. I've told him, stop all that crying. But when I became a therapist, I began to see benefits to crying. Yeah. And then a lot of times men don't have language to talk about their emotions. They can talk about being mad and happy, but when we talk about being sad or talk about being afraid, don't talk about that.
Right. Right. And Aries brought up something very important that I feel like we should talk about, which is the fact that, Black men are put in this masculinity box, and when something like abuse happens to them, which, obviously happens a lot with our Black men, it happens, and it's not discussed, it's not talked about, it's more like taboo. But then when it is talked about, they're kind of put in this masculine box of, if you didn't like it, you must be gay, or, you're just trying to play the victim. And so it's like, they're lost in already, a system that just really doesn't comfort them. So what are your thoughts on that?
If I look at lifespan development, there's this whole notion that where you experience that trauma or that adverse childhood experience, a lot of times people don't stop at that stage. So you have people that will get abused as a child, and then they won't meet certain milestones because they experienced that abuse during that age, and they're stuck there.
Yeah.
And then you have ones in adolescence as well. So you'll have ones that I used to deal with people that were incarcerated, and they'll get stuck. They went to jail at 15, and they lost that part of their childhood. So therefore, now when they get out, they want to figure out what it's like.
What it's like, yeah,
to do that.
I want to hear from you two. How did it feel getting that out? You know, was it empowering to talk about what you've been through?
I mean, yes, but also like I rather me expressing myself and telling my testimony or my story about what I've been through. I just want it to be a light for somebody else. You know, somebody else could be going through the same exact thing, even worse. But for me to know what I've been through and what helped me cope through it and how I maintain, you know, especially me being young in this generation, I'd rather be the light, like I said, be the light for somebody else. Because if it can happen to me, it can just happen the same exact thing to you. You just gotta know to believe and not to give up.
Yeah. Earlier in the episode, you know, I spoke to Pastor Alphonse Allen Jr. about how he admitted that the church isn't doing enough. And that this is what they're doing going forward to try to combat mental illness in the Black community in general. So how does that make you feel, knowing what you've experienced, that there are some good churches in the community that are trying to do good and get back in that area?
You know, prime example, you know, I go to this church right now, Ecclesia Temple. You know, shout out to Pastor Don Derek Sorrells. Ever since I've been to this church, it's been light. It's love, respected, and there's a lot of people that's pouring into me. And you know, I can honestly say everybody is not the same.
Yeah.
Some people have their own agendas. Some people, you know what I mean, can take something that you've been through and use it against you.
Yeah.
But you know, and then you have people that can really see that, you know, you've been through something and you're trying to change, so they're gonna pour into you to elevate.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, everybody ain't the same.
Right,
and that's what I say about it.
What about you, Aries? Was this empowering to get this out for you?
Absolutely. Like I kind of stated, I've seen the cruelty of the world. I've seen the ugliness that life is capable of. I've seen the harshness of man, the devils of men, the evil that can be in people's hearts. But I chose not to live there.
Yeah.
Because I have real estate there. I own timeshares there. You know what I mean? But it's not a neighborhood, or it's not a destination I want to live in. Not just for the sanity of myself, but for my children and my children's children. But you know, if my life can be a survival guide, if I can say, hey, you're going through this, it's okay. Let's deal with it and let's start healing. If I can get people at that cross section of healing before they're 30, before they have a life to lose, before they have significant others to worry about growing apart from, you know, if I can save a life, then it's worth it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. What would you two say to the Black man right now watching you? May have experienced the same things that you experienced, maybe experiencing something different. What parting words would you say to them about getting help?
You know what I say? It's okay to get the help. You know, open up more. Because the more you open up, the better you're going to feel, and the better you're going to know yourself, and the better you can be able to change and maintain and really accomplish life.
Yeah.
You know, forget about what people might think of you. You know, you got to know who you are at the end of the day, and where you stand and where you going to go in this life, you know. And I just tell them, you know, believe in yourself and believe that it is resources and it is people out here, good people who really care for you to help you. And You know, just don't give up.
Yeah. What about you, Aries?
To my black men, to my brothers, first I say I love you.
Yeah.
Secondly, I say I understand, and thirdly, I say it's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
You did not create these situations; you were prevented in, and everything bad that happened to you was not because you deserve it. It's not because you're a bad person. You were not protected. You were thrusted into a situation and a system that was designed well before you were even thought of.
Yeah.
I understand your hate, your pain, your rage, and I also understand your secrets.
Yeah.
But you choose those things.
Exactly. Absolutely.
You are exactly who you choose to be. My kids think I'm a superhero, so that's my choice. I chose to be a superhero.
Yeah.
I chose to be AG God.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And at the end of the day, I'm not those things I thought I was.
Yeah.
I am powerful. I am energy. I am love incarnate. I am wholeness. I am a being. I am a divine person. And I've been here to infect the world with change and things that it needs.
Okay.
Keep going.
I appreciate that. Lauren, just to bring it back to you, what resources are out there that you can talk about for those watching?
Definitely, if you need resources, you can call 211 United Way to get resources. You can also reach out to Poppy's Therapeutic Corner here. They have a lot of black clinicians. And then also you can come to my agency, which is Modern Psychiatry and Wellness. There's so many different resources. So you can reach out to Central Clinic, Cincinnati Behavioral, Talbot House as well. And call your insurance as well. They'll give you resources. So.
But for those who don't have insurance, then they have those resources available.
Yeah, Mental Health America will provide services.
Mental Health America, okay. Awesome. You had some parting words for some of the things that were said in the discussion previously. Would you like to elaborate on them?
Yeah, to the guys here, man, it was so powerful. They touched the soul with what they said. It was beautiful because so many times we do shut up and we don't talk and we don't express ourselves. And I respect and I appreciate everything that y'all said because we're around the same age and I have a story too. And part of the reason why I got into the field, you talk about the church. I'm a preacher and I wanted to be an educated preacher because why not?
Yeah.
Know what you're talking about if you're going to do it and then provide those linkages. So.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned some things in your notes that you wanted to discuss. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up? Anything that you think is important for people to know?
Yeah. So we talked about how the trauma related to anxiety and there was things about paranoia that they talked about. There was PTSD. So if I was going to diagnose, which I won't because they're not my clients, but I heard PTSD today. And then I heard him talking about dissociation and adverse childhood experiences. We talked about suicidality, forgiveness, resilience, lack of parental figures, abandonment issues, relationship issues, and impairment of functioning. So there was so much in just those words that they were saying. So I would say if you were impacted by the story and you know somebody that has a similar story, get help.
Yeah. Are suicide rates higher with younger black men than they are with adult black men?
I would say that teenagers in general do have higher rates.
And why is that?
Because there's so much that happens in that time span. There's a lot of identity issues that happen. You're trying to find yourself. You're trying to figure out your group identity versus your individual identity. And then children are mean.
Yeah.
Social media is mean.
Yes,
you can say stuff with so much anonymity and have no consequences for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being on my show, Lauren. I would love to have you back on other episodes, so please keep in contact. And thank you, Monty and Aries, for being here. I so appreciate you, and I think so many people are going to watch this and really find strength in your stories. And that's what Sharing with Sheri is about. Thank you for tuning in to Sharing with Sheri. If you are feeling depressed or going through anxiety, or if you have any suicidal thoughts, you are not alone. Please reach out to our 24-hour hotline, 988, and someone can help you or find a provider in your area to help you. Please reach out, and help is there. Again, before we go, we're going to see a clip of Monty performing his own, what is it called?
It's called Waymaker.
Waymaker. He created this and performed this, and we're going to show a clip of that after this. So please stay tuned after this is over. And thank you for sharing with Sheri. I'll see you next time. Take good care. Bye.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, no, yeah, 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 yeah. You're the God of miracles, signs and wonders. I believe in your power. I believe you. I believe, and I believe. I believe in your power. I believe. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And that is who you are. And that is who you are. That is who you are. And that is who you are. Yeah. Oh yeah. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And that is who you are. And that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are.